How many genders are there?
There are two genders, period. And that's the way it'll be in 100 years. 200 years, when they dig up bones, they're going to find two genders, male and female, period.
Is he allowed to say that legally?
All right, let's get into this.
How many genders are there, do you believe?
I believe there are two.
Scientifically, there's only two genders. How did we all get here? Because a male and a female had sex?
There are two. In reality, there are two. There is a male and female gender.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
You can't tell anyone that secret. Being gay is like way worse than being a thief or taking drugs. That's how, it was labeled back in my, school.
Being an LGBT kid in schools in the Philippines isn't easy. We documented a lot of bullying that LGBT students still face. Some of that was physical bullying, like being pushed or shoved, in addition to things like verbal bullying or cyberbullying or sexual harassment, which can be very severe. What we actually found is that a lot of teachers participate in the harassment, and for that reason, a lot of students don't feel comfortable going to teachers to tell them that, their peers are doing the same thing and are making them feel excluded and left out.
Sometimes for a young LGBT person, it's really confusing, it's really disheartening when you can't find someone to talk about your experiences and you can't sympathize with anyone. So at the very least, teachers and counselors should be more open about these discussions.
Very few schools in the Philippines have LGBT issues incorporated into the curriculum, and that can be done in a couple of ways. You can incorporate LGBT inclusive information into biology classes or history classes or psychology classes, and especially in sex education classes. We find that a lot of the information that students are getting in sex education classes reproduces really negative stereotypes about LGBT people.
They told us that having same-sex relation is wrong, being a transgender is wrong, and then I was called out again by a teacher this time in class, and everyone was so silent. And the teacher said, God only created man and woman, no one in between. I felt ashamed because a teacher would tell me that in front of everyone.
The government is aware that LGBT kids are bullied and face difficulties in schools, and there are laws in place that are supposed to protect LGBT students and say that this is wrong, but without effective teacher training or monitoring by the Department of Education, no one's making sure that LGBT kids are being kept safe in school.
This is ecological analysis of gender identity constructs in English Language Learning Affordances toward developing a gender-inclusive framework for language instruction, a tripartite project of the DOST, PNU, and PSHS, with encouragement from Chet. This research takes inspiration from a grammar exercise that happened in my class. Once, I wrote this erroneous sentence on the board for correction. Jim Rosario's husband is a nice man. To my surprise, instead of the conventional fix, some of our Gen Z students answered. When pressed for an explanation, they argued that Rosario's is Jim's surname. And by adding the possessive apostrophe plus S, it's become more inclusive because that way, they were acknowledging the possibility of Jim identifying theirself as non-binary, thus respecting diverse gender identities. A routine grammar lesson that sparked a unique response from students, revealing an insightful shift in English language education. As this incident highlights the evolving nature of teaching and learning English as a second language, where traditional linguistic rules intersect with contemporary social values, marking a significant departure from conventional approaches. The unexpected twist also sheds light on a broader societal shift, a poignant illustration of moving toward acknowledging and respecting non-binary identities. In an era where Gen Z learners are more attuned to issues of gender inclusivity, even a seemingly routine grammar exercise becomes an opportunity for thoughtful reflection and consideration of diverse perspectives. Indubitably, It also highlights a disconcerting reality that despite this cultural evolution, the education system often remains entrenched in traditional, heteronormative gender norms. Needless to say, there's this unmistakable disparity between learners and our education system, or as the EdCom 2 report from last year would call it, the failed system of Philippine education. And this vantage point we are presented right now may just be one of the culprits. Case in point, our instructional materials, curriculum frameworks, and educational policies frequently perpetuate the heteronormative paradigm by centering on binary gender distinctions. Another case in point, we have our very own institution, the education sector, with Education 2030. Policy documents such as this are like telling us that education is only for girls and boys, exclusively. And this is our sad status quo. The heteronormativity of gender is institutionalized by international organizations. Hindsight, it's 2025, but still, these policy documents are exclusively binary. At home, we are still perpetuating the same exclusionary perspective. Fortunately now, in PSHS, under our 6-year curriculum, we are changing such a screwed-up paradigm. We teach our scholars the singular they in English. Teacher Lily, the one in yellow, our English 1 teacher at CRC, confirmed it. That is, for both non-specific and specific reference, such as when we say, somebody is in love, they seem happy. Or when we say, Suki loves chicken, they eat it every meal. But here's the rub. While PSHS scholars are introduced to such a non-heteronormative paradigm, the question remains, is this learning opportunity articulated across the curriculum? Are all textbooks consistent with this paradigm? Are all members of our academic community practicing it? We'd like to know, hence this research. In this research, there are 5 inquiries that we are looking into. First, what are the English Language Affordances, or ELAs, in the Grade 12 English curriculum at PSHS? Our focus is on the Grade 12 classroom and its milieus, or environments. The technical term for that one is affordances. Inside the classroom are the participants, namely the teachers and students, who are the primary consumers of the curriculum. And then we have the textbook writers and reviewers, then school managers and other educationists. Using Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, we are able to define systemically these affordances. First, we have the focal circle, where the focal individual or individuals are. The students and teachers who are perceivers, negotiators, and probably enablers of gender identity constructs. In nested layers, the concentric circles continue with the first layer, which is the microsystem or the microsystemic affordance in this study. Specifically, the language used in textbooks or the textbook language of instruction, or LOI. On top of this layer is the mesosystemic affordance. In this study, it's the classroom LOI or the brand of language that the grade 12 teachers speak. And then we have the exosystemic affordance with school policies. On top of it is the macrosystemic affordance, which is the school culture in this study. And then on top of it all is the chronosystemic affordance, which in this study are the evolving social attitudes. We categorize the micro and meso as internal ELAs, as in inside the classroom. And we categorize exo, macro, and chrono as external ELAs, as in outside the classroom. And then we have research question number 2. What are the prevalent GICs within the ELAs? As established, we have the classroom participants as the focal individuals who are direct consumers of the curriculum, perceivers, negotiators, producers, and even enablers of GICs. There are 3 known categories of GICs in literature: gendered, which is the gender binary; degendered, which is gender neutral; and multigendered, which is gender diverse. As established, the first 2 are not really inclusive since certain identities are silenced. And then we have research question number 3. How do key ecological factors influence the manifestations of the GICs within the ELAs? In this study, we will establish that ecological factors are the external LS affecting the LOIs, which are the brand of language used in the textbooks and by the teachers, which are the internal LS. Hence, the line between external LS and internal LS. And finally, for the fourth and fifth research questions. The diagram at the center illustrates how GICs will be analyzed within the concentric layers of ecological systems in ELAs. Using critical discourse analysis or CDA as a lens, since we are of the opinion that CDA is a very useful methodology for this one, as it acts as a magnifier, highlighting the intricate layers of ecological affordances and enabling the critical examination of language, power, and gender dynamics. For example, it could be seen in this investigation that the GICs in this school are perpetuating the promotion of marginal, oppositional, or alternative discourses surrounding GICs. That's for this study to find out and for you to paint the picture by sharing your perceptions and experiences. And only CDA can make that visible. The 5 ecological layers contextualize how GICs manifest and influence your perceptions, negotiations, and enactments of gender identity as classroom participants. The cascading light from the magnifying glass symbolizes the flow of insights from you that will inform the development of the framework. And this framework will give us the bigger picture of PSHS. What is our school culture in terms of gender? Are we still upholding the exclusionary binarism, or are we slowly transitioning out of it? So, if you feel like participating and being heard, or you want to be the voice of silenced identities, there will be a very short online survey for you to respond. And in case you would really like to participate in full swing, rest assured that this will not be eating so much of your time. You will only do it during your free hours, in person or up close, or in any communication platform with which you are most convenient. This study will employ the qualitative development research design, because we will be creating a framework with a bit of quant on the side just to validate some information. But we wish to be in depth with everything, so it's going to be qualitative. And it will be implemented in 7 selected regional campuses of PSHS, your school being one. And just in case you're wondering, what's the agenda here? Or, do we have an agenda? Essentially, we are taking this study because we believe that representation is important. Because linguistically speaking, we are inclined to believe cognitive scientist Lera Boroditsky when she said that our language profoundly influences the way we perceive and think about the world. Or like one of our professors at PNU would always say, attention to meaning is important. Because if we don't pay attention to our language use, injustice happens. Like this. Did you know that it is only until 2022 that when a man of legal age is sexually harassed or assaulted by another man, it was not called rape? Imagine how many disenfranchised people there had been simply because the law was sexist. This is because, until 2022, our law defined rape as committed by a man to a woman. How sexist was that, right? And how binary? How about the non-binary individuals? Were they not accounted for? As we all know, unfortunately, there are bigoted people who dispel the idea of non-binary individuals, invalidating the very existence of this minority, simply because they are not the minority, simply because they are at the advantage. Case in point, some people think that the use of non-sexist language in government agencies as promulgated by the CSC is not important, that pronouns are not important. Some people think transgenders are a joke. Forget about Jude Bacalso's lack of political charm, which by the way dragged SOGIESC advocacies back 100 years. We believe that bigotry can only do so much until people are stripped of their basic human rights simply because. However, we also know that discourses like this are a lot to take in, and we know it's a tad depressing when we think of it like that. But there's always a blue sky. You know, there was a time when people used to hate evolution, because it's always easier to hate something that we do not understand, like homosexuality. We hate evolution. We hate gays because that is what is in for a time. But yet again, there's always a blue sky. And this research gives us a glimpse of that blue sky because here, we pay attention to exploring the voices of silenced identities. When gender is used to mean biological determinism and for it to be the only socially acceptable cultural norm in the contemporary world, the misnomered notion of binary categorization is weaponized to disenfranchise those who do not align neatly with the male-female designations.